Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? Um, we have something really important to talk about, okay? 47 is sounding the alarm, and it's loud and clear. It really is. And it's got every patriot's heart racing right now. This mess could spark WW3, and he's damn right to call it out the way that he is. He is exposing the raw deal. And he said, we've dumped $350 billion into this sinkhole while Europe's being cheapskates pony up just about $100 billion. And that's our lion tearing into the globalist scam. America is not their piggy bank anymore. So let's hammer the truth, right? Ukraine lost 600,000 souls, okay? And that in my heart is just deafening. And we're stuck with the tab. $175 billion more than Europe, while their elites sip on champagne. And Putin he has like 1,500 nukes. Iran is watching on the sidelines with 3,000 missiles. And 47 is spot on. This could blow up into Armageddon if the war hawks don't back off. And he's wrestling right now with the stubbornness of Zelensky and the cardless beggars, while the signaling of peace is trying to come through on other sides. I'm not on Putin's side here, okay? I'm on our side here, okay? Let me just put that out there. But a ceasefire was called for in 2022. And 46's clowns trashed it. Here's a fact for you. Europe's NATO freeloaders, they pay 2% GDP. We're at 4%. 47 is fed up. And we the people are fed up as well. This is why 74 million people voted for him. It's almost as if he's a shield against WW3. He's not a woke puppet. And it's almost as if the left they're itching. They're itching for chaos and for mayhem and for war. And 47 is playing a chess game right now. He's playing a chess game for peace, not checkers for war. And Europe, they need to step up, or we're going to step down. America first means for our survival, not their folly. There's an unfiltered take on 47's warning. As Teddy Roosevelt once said, speak softly and carry a big stick. Trump's stick is massive, and the world is listening.
So we're in for $350 billion, and Europe is in for $100 billion. They should be in for the same or more than us. And, you know, I watched over the last week or so what's going on in Europe. This thing could end up in World War III if we don't get it settled.
So this video is where 300,000 Polish patriots, okay, are on the streets to declare that Poland is a Christian country. Britain and Europe must follow their lead. And, you know, it's almost like there's an uprising going on when it comes to patriots. I can feel it. So in this video, pay attention. This is a history teacher who's going to, when I watched it, I was like, I had no idea. You know, and my husband's a history buff and he watched it and he's like, wow, you know, he's going to give us all a lesson on Ukraine and what really happened with Russia. And it has to do with policy. And this is something that you can look up yourself if you so want to. And it's very educational. And it's because, if you remember years ago, I talked about a term called force majeure. It kind of has something to do with that. If you can't keep up with your end of the deal, okay? That.
You know, the truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. Just fucking hell. So after yesterday's video, I said to myself, Self, how the hell did all this start? And I was pleasantly surprised. So, history time. And I'm using pleasantly pretty loosely. Quick bit of backstory. The Soviet Union fell back in 1991, after which the CIS was formed. This is the Commonwealth of Independent States. You see, as the Soviet Union degraded, Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus signed the Belovezh Accords. Essentially, it was taking and dividing up the Soviet Union into independent countries, one of them being Ukraine. Now, part of these accords was that should any one of these countries default, and by default I mean the inability to act as a sovereign nation, lose leadership, financial problems, whatever it may be, that country would then default back to being part of Russia. Listen, I'm not saying any of this is right, I'm just saying it happened. So how does this fit into everything that's going on? Well, we've all heard about Crimea. Crimea is a small peninsula to the south of Ukraine that borders Russia and the Black Sea. It was annexed by Russia in 2014. Now that's where this kind of all started. So it's generally believed that Crimea is part of Ukraine, so therefore Russia invaded Ukraine, and that's how this all started, right? I mean, that's it. Big bad Russia invaded Ukraine, right? That should be cut and dry, right? No, that's not how it works. You see, at the time, Crimea was actually an independent country. It was known as the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. It was kind of like an administrative state of Ukraine. However, it's its own independent country, which falls under the CIS, which means should the country default, it goes back to Russia, which is exactly what happened. One day, all of the government, politicians, leaders just up and fucking left. Stood up one day and is like, peace, bitches, I'm out. Which technically made the country default because it can no longer protect its sovereignty. Therefore, because it's an independent country and it can no longer protect its sovereignty, according to Belozia Accords, it goes back to Russia. Which is what happened. Except Ukraine didn't want to give it up. They said technically it's part of Ukraine. Which is true. But it was an independent country that fucking defaulted. Them's the rules. So how does that lead to the current war? See, during this time on the down low, Zelensky opened up negotiations with NATO. Started texting them like a side piece there, you know? Hey, baby, I want to be part of NATO. Well, that's okay. We'd love to have you. I mean, some bullshit is what it is. So this goes on for a little bit, and all of a sudden, Putin catches wind of this. He's sitting there like, this is not how this works. We had an agreement, a treaty. Now, I can't find any record of it, but I would imagine that Putin reached out to Zelensky and said something along the lines of, so this is not how the CIS works. This is how the CIS works. Fucking stop now. But Zelensky kept having meetings with NATO. So Putin created his own meeting with NATO. Walked in there and said, look, this is not how the CIS works. We have our own independent treaty. Stop. To which NATO responded, okay, no, and you can't make us. Now I'm paraphrasing here, but I can imagine Russia said something like, fucking bet. You see, I will turn that country into beaded glass before I ever give it to you. And it was at this point NATO should have been like, well, that's inconvenient, so, well, on to plan B here. But they didn't. They doubled down and continued talking with Zelensky. This is why Zelensky says he'll step down if they join NATO. Because then NATO would defend them against Russia. Which is why nobody sent troops over there, because that's a huge treaty violation. So as expected, Russia said stop doing this, and Ukraine said we're not going to stop doing this, and so Putin said fine, have it your way, you fucked around, now it's time to find out. And here we are. See, here's the problem though. Back in the 90s, we told Ukraine to give up their nuclear weapons and we'll protect them. Which makes this a huge gray area. Because technically speaking, Russia never invaded Ukraine. It followed the CIS and the Belozia Accords and took back a defaulted, independent, autonomous state that couldn't protect their sovereignty. Ukraine didn't see it that way. Now here's the Jesus rollerblading Christ of all of this. Technically, by backing Ukraine during all of this, we've committed an act of war against Russia. We should have never been backing them to begin with, because Ukraine didn't have the ability to defend against Russia until they got our weaponry and money. Then the playing field was level. I mean, looking at it this way, Russia is ignoring and sweeping the fact that Biden actually made a declaration of war, which again, can't be done by a president, can only be done by Congress. So Biden unilaterally created an act of war against Russia by backing Ukraine without the approval of Congress. This is one of those things I really wished I wouldn't have looked into because the truth is so much worse. Which again, this is the shit that starts world wars. And there's no politics here, and I'm not trying to fearmonger anybody. I'm just telling the truth as it is. This is all verifiable. You can look it up. That's how I found it. I mean, this puts a lot of things into perspective. And with that being said, thanks for watching. The best way to support me is to like, comment, or share on these videos. And be nice, be kind, be patient.
So, this woman, her name is Harriet Hagerman. She is in the Department of Education. And she says that when it comes to the Department of Education, they get, an allotted amount of money every single year. But not every penny goes towards education. They only get maybe a fraction, and I mean a very small fraction, goes towards our kids. And this is going to hit home for a lot of us because whether we have our own children in school or our nieces and nephews, grandchildren, okay? Now, I have two grandchildren that are in school right now, okay? Giovanni is 11 and Mia will be 10 in just a few weeks. And I have my nieces, my nephews that are in school, okay? Kiriana is 15 and Dominic is 10. And it amazes me because you have some schools who you don't even get textbook anymore. You get a tablet or you get a laptop and you get to bring that tablet or laptop home, right? Because I know here, my grandchildren and my niece, my nephew, they get issued laptops and they have to bring the laptops home and we have to sign, paperwork saying that if anything happens to the laptop or the tablet, we are responsible. We have to pay $350 at the end of the year to replace it, this, that, and the other, right? And in some school districts, they don't even have enough textbooks for each child. In some school districts, students have to share textbooks. And that to me is terrible. How can you expect these kids to go home and study when they have to share textbooks? So when it comes to the Department of Education, I feel, and this woman knows, that it's money laundering. And then we fall on the issue of, and I've talked about this before, school lunches and things of that sort. Have you ever seen what they dish out for these kids for school lunches? Do yourself the favor and send your kid to school with a lunch, okay? I would not allow any child to eat that food. Story time. My nephew, who's 10, Dominic. For the longest time, we couldn't figure out why we were constantly getting calls from the school nurse on why he was constantly throwing up in school. And it just so happened to be right after lunch. And I said, is he gorging himself? Is he eating too much? That type of thing. Because, he was constantly going through growth spurts, this, that, and the other. And I said to the nurse, I said, well, what was on the menu for today? Because don't forget, I raised my niece and nephew until my husband's sister got the custody back of the kids. And she said, well, it was this, that, the other. And I got with some other moms in the neighborhood. And I said, are your kids getting sick after eating the school lunch? They said, no. What's going on? So pediatrician, here we come. Here, there's so much preservatives and chemical and garbage in that food. Dominic was literally, his body couldn't, it was reacting to it. So, being the aunt that I am, okay, and, being his guardian at the time, packing lunch. And he was one of the very few that had to have a packed lunch, but, hey, listen, he wasn't getting sick anymore. So, these are the things that they're giving our kids, this food that I wouldn't give it to my dog. Okay, there's probably more nutrition packed in dog food and cat food than there is in, okay. So it's just things that make you wonder, They get all this money every single year, but yet they're giving them food that I wouldn't give to my own animals. There's not enough textbook to go around in some school district, but yet some school districts, they're getting laptops and tablets to take home. So let that sink in. Ciao.
So is the DOGE program targeted at these bureaucrats?
Yes.
And so what can you expect?
Well, let's look at the Department of Education. The Federal Department of Education has a budget of about $280 billion a year. Less than 25% goes to educating our students. So where does the other $220 billion go? It goes to a bureaucracy. It goes to a consultant, and that consultant then donates money back to the Democrats, and then it goes to a different consultant, and then it goes to an NGO, and then it goes to, it is money laundering and money churning at its absolute best. And you can look at almost every single agency and you will find it. So the brilliance of DOGE isn't that he's going in and cutting spending. He doesn't have the authority to do that. We're the ones that have the authority to do that. What I want him to do is come up with a report, go through agency by agency by agency, identify every single program that we should not be funding, put a number attached to it. We slap a preamble on the front of that report, and we say that every single agency is having their budget cut by X amount as shown in the attached report, and none of those programs can go forward from here on out.